It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for Season 8 of The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a significant piece of proof or clue about how all-out war will end. So there's a big hint in the 801 episode in the premiere of Season 8. So if you go back and take a look at the scene where we have Rick shooting Negan, and, once Gabriel stops him, he basically goes back, takes a camera, and takes a Polaroid shot of Negan as he is basically hiding. Now, for those of you that don't understand why Rick did that, there's a pretty solid explanation for it. So if you go back and take a look at Season 7, Episode 1, right at the end of the episode, before Rick and the others leave the area where Abraham and Glenn were killed, we see one of the saviors taking a Polaroid shot of Glenn's dead body on the ground. And that basically connects with another scene from Season 6. Because if you remember, in Season 6, if you take a look at that episode, when we have the group attacking one of Negan's outposts, there's one scene where Glenn sees a bunch of Polaroids on the wall of people's bashed in heads. And, one of the saviors was keeping those Polaroid photos as like trophies or something like that. So we know Negan likes to keep trophies like that, or at least his followers like to do that. So what Rick did in 801 is basically circling around to that moment. So Rick took a Polaroid photo of Negan as he was hiding. He was helpless. He couldn't do anything. Rick could have very well killed him. And that's Negan at his weakest and lowest moments as far as we know. And to the eyes of his followers, that may not look so good. And Negan might not want to remember this moment later on. He might want to forget about it. And for Rick to do this, he's basically taking the photo, and I am 100% sure that this photo is going to come back into play later on. So we're going to see a situation where Rick uses that photo to basically get back at Negan for what he has done. So now I'm going to basically get into some comic materials. So the rest of this video is going to contain some spoilers from the comic book. So if you're not a comic book reader, and if you don't want to know about what happens in the comics at the end of the war, you may not want to watch the rest of this video. So this is your spoiler warning here. So for the rest of you that are still here, as you know, in the comics, once the war is done, Negan is defeated, but he's not killed. So Rick ends up not killing Negan and putting him in a jail cell instead. And he is basically imprisoned. Now, what does this have to do with the Polaroids? Well, if you remember, in Season 7, when Daryl was at the sanctuary as a hostage, we saw when he was in the cell, Dwight brought one of those Polaroid shots of Glenn's dead body and put it right on the wall, right next to Daryl, as a way to remind Daryl that he was responsible for Glenn's death. So it was basically Negan's way, because of course I don't think Dwight did it by himself. It was one of Negan's strategies to try to break Daryl. So we know Negan likes to use these photos as a way to antagonize the people he's trying to torture and break. So I'm sure Daryl has told Rick that story. And Rick was there to see those photos being taken of Glenn and Abe's dead bodies. So I'm pretty sure once we get to the end of the war and once Rick puts Negan in the cell, he is going to put those Polaroid photos on the wall. And it's going to be Rick's way of trying to not necessarily break Negan, but torture him, just like he's tortured Rick all of this time. So even though Negan is not killed and he is basically paying for what he's done by being in the cell, he is still being tortured mentally. And every day he wakes up, he is forced to look at the photo and think about him at his lowest point, when he was hiding and when his top lieutenants left him outside by himself while the battle was going on and everything. And I'm pretty sure that's a moment Negan would want to forget. So it's Rick's way of torturing Negan. So basically this gives us a very huge hint about how the war is going to end. They're going to stick to comic material and have Rick imprison Negan instead of killing him. But that's it for this video. I want to know everybody's thoughts about this and whether you think it's a huge clue about what's going to happen at the end of the war. For me, it's definitely a big clue, and 100% sure that they're going to go with the same story as the comics in terms of Negan's fate. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.